Hi there, I'm Tasha from Tasha Quilts, and today we're doing another round of RNG. We're letting a random number generator pick which block we're sewing out of the Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Blocks and sewing it up no matter what. If you've been following along, you know that I bought the Encyclopedia of Pieced Quilt Blocks and the Block Base Plus software. That is a tongue twister every single time. And I am sewing up random quilt blocks from that book. So let's see what the random number generator, or RNG, has in store for us today. So first, I put in a number from 1 to 25 to figure out which main section we were going to be working with. And we got 14, square and a square. And then there were 19 categories within that section, and we got number 17, like windows and doors. There are a few really pretty options in here. As a curvy loving person, this section is right up my alley. I really like the second one with the fans in the corners, so that's the one I'm rooting for. However, we got number 10, and this one definitely looks like a challenging block. I'm pretty excited to get going on this. It's called the Buggy Wheel, or Wheel of Fortune, and was published for the first time in 1935. I know I'm a broken record when it comes to this, but how freaking cool is it that someone was sewing this up back in 1935, and here I am today sewing it again. It is so much fun. And I also can't wait to see what the secondary pattern would be if you sewed up a few of these. I'll show a few mock-ups at the end. So the last time I tried to do RNG for the color as well, but I decided I'm letting the random number generator pick the block. I'm going to pick the color. Today I settled on a purple and a white fabric that I'm going to use to make this block. All right, so let's talk the process of like how I thought about how I was going to make this block. The middle, that part's easy. It's a square. Check. And I guess that's kind of where the easy part stops. Next up, we have these curves in the corner, and those are pretty relatively easy for me to make templates for. I'm really used to curvy quilts, as you can see behind me. So I think making curved templates in that in Adobe Illustrator, no big deal. Not going to fret about that. The next part, we kind of have, I don't know what you call these shapes, so I'm going to call them curved triangles that kind of surround the square. And I also think that templates are a good option for that as well. So I'm going to make templates. I made templates for those in Adobe Illustrator. But the last part we have is that like curved section of triangles. And while technically I think you could make templates for those, the idea of that makes me ill. They're small. So I decided that foundation paper piecing is the way I'm going to go for those. I'm really leaning into the foundation paper piecing lately. Have you noticed? So I'll show you some of a quick behind the scenes of this. So first I take the SVG out of the block-based software and I pull it into Adobe Illustrator. And then using what's called a stroke in Adobe Illustrator, I'm able to make the outlines of the templates I want. I went with a 12-inch block for this. And the only other thing that you have to do after you add the seam allowance, especially on the foundation paper piecing, is you have to mirror it so that it comes out the way that you want it to come out. I learned that lesson the hard way. I will put these templates for free up on my website at the time of filming this. I may decide in the future to change my mind and list them for a small dollar to help recover some of the costs of my time and energy in the software to put them together. So you've been warned. I'm going to walk you through my steps of assembling this block. Let's start with the FPP part because that's the easiest. I printed these blocks out at actual size. This is going to be a theme of the day, at actual size, on the EQ8 newspaper paper that they sent me. I love this for foundation paper piecing. Prior to this, I was just using regular copy paper, and you can totally use regular copy paper. It's fine. But now I'm kind of feeling like a little snobby about it, and I like using the newspaper thin paper. It just makes it easier to tear them out, I feel like. So you're going to make sure you print that at actual size. You're going to test the 1 inch, and then you're going to FPP this as normal. I printed out all of my rectangles at 2 inches by 3 inches to do these sections. They were definitely bigger than I needed, but I still consider myself a baby foundation paper piecer, and I like to have a little bit of extra wiggle room when I'm doing foundation paper piecing. So, but you do you. However you want to make it, you go for it. Okay, so next I'm going to talk to you about how I make my templates. So I do print those out on your standard regular copy paper, again at actual size, again using the 1 inch mark to make sure that they're the right size. And you could use these as is. If you were making a couple of blocks, you could use these as is without reinforcing them. If you just maybe print a couple extra copies or one extra copy in case you need it, or print them as you need it. I personally like to reinforce my blocks with acrylic template plastic. So I take my templates that are printed on the paper and roughly cut them so I don't cut exactly on the line. And then I use Scotch tape to tape them to whatever I'm reinforcing them to. In my case, it's going to be the plastic. So I'm going to tape them to the plastic. Once I have them all taped to the plastic, I use scissors to cut on the line and cut out my templates. So now I have templates that are the right size. I do cut right on the edge of the outside of the line usually. So I try to keep the black line intact, but you have wiggle room here. So don't get too crazy about it. So now that I have my templates cut out, I'll use blue masking tape to tape them to the fabric and then use my rotary cutter to cut them out. I typically do 1 or 2 pieces of fabric. You can also use washers to hold your fabric down. Make sure you're being very careful. Make sure you're cutting away from your body. Be very, very careful. Rotary blades are sharp. We know this. So just be careful when you're doing this. But it's not so scary. You can also trace this, put the template pieces down, trace them with a marker and cut out with scissors or rotary cutter and blade, whatever floats your boat. And I have a detailed video of how I like to cut and sew my curves that I will link here. And so if you want like an in-depth on how I show an example of how I trace them, how I cut them. So if you want to go check out that video, I will link it for you above and down in the description below. And then the last piece I had to cut out was the square in the middle, which was easy. So I assembled this block in sections. So the easiest part of this block to sew was the square with those curved triangles, and I attached 1 curved triangle to each side of the square, so that part was easy. I then did the FPP pieces, which was also pretty standard, pretty easy, pretty enjoyable. I actually was able to do one of them on my live. That's how simple it was. I only made 1 mistake, but that's okay. And there's nothing more satisfying than trimming foundation paper pieced fabric. Is there anything more satisfying? I've been talking about it. It's like, it reminds me of pulling little plastic bits off your new electronics. I just love cutting a foundation paper piece segment, and you get to see the goodness that's hiding under there. Then I sewed up the 2 curved pieces that are in the corners, and I'll just kind of, again, talk you through high level how I do this. But then again, please remember that I have that detailed video out there that walks you through all my steps. So I use an iron, and I fold each section in half, press it so that you have a little crease. I like to do 1 wrong sides together, 1 right sides together, so that there's they actually nest each other, like the creases are going in opposite directions. I then like to use a combination of pins and clips. I'm pretty particular about this, and I haven't really changed too much. I like to pin the middle where the creases line up, and then I like to pin at the end where it ends. And then I like to put another pin on the part that you're going to put through the sewing machine, but maybe like an inch away from the end so that you're not having to fiddle with it right away. And then I put clips in so that everything lays nice and flat. You just want to take your time here, get it all nice and flat, and then you sew it with 1/4 of an inch just like you do anything else. You just get it under there, go nice and slow, only worry about what's on your needle. If you're starting to see a little pleat, give it a little tug, but you're only worried about what's under your needle. Don't be fretting about everything else. So just keep that in mind. Nice and slow. You've sewn 1/4 of an inch 1,000 times. You can do it here too. So once the curves were done, I added the foundation paper piecing units to those curves, and you're going to see this theme. Another common theme of the video will be, again, folding, pressing to find the middle, pinning, using that same strategy I just described. And so now I have the 2 curves sewn together with the nice, pretty decorative curve on the end. So I did that 4 times, and I have 4 of those units. And then the last bit is to sew each one of those sections to that center bit. And you guessed it again, fold in half, press to find the center, and then clip and sew just like anything else. I will say in this case, I did initially leave the paper in for the first one I did of the foundation paper piecing section. I did leave the paper in for when I sewed it to the 2 circle units, that was fine, or the 2 curved units, that was fine. But I did find when I was sewing it to the center unit, I didn't like it. It was clunky. And so I ended up pulling the papers out to sew the rest of the units. So, you can try one with the paper in and see what you like, or take it out, whatever's easiest for you. I can tell you that I did it both ways with this block, and both ways worked. So it's really a matter of preference thing here. But I, did the exact same strategy as sewing any of these other curves. And then once that's done, that's it, right? I make it sound pretty simple, but the block looks a lot harder than it really was. And so here we go. Here was the final result. I really, really like it. I really, really like it. I might make some more of these. I really might. I will say when I hung it up on the design wall, it didn't lay completely flat. I goofed up one of the sections. I'm not exactly sure what I goofed up, if my seam allowance just wasn't quite right. But I do feel like if maybe I steamed it and pressed it, it would come out. But we'll see. I don't worry. I don't get bogged down with those details, right? Like as if I were to put that together, quilt it up, I think nobody would ever notice that, right? I did do some mock-ups so that we could see the secondary patterns that are created. And so here's the first mock-up with a 2-color, just standard horizontal line mock-up, which I like. The next one is that same 2-color mock-up, but on the diagonal, or on point, I mean. And I really, really like that too. I think it looks nice and sharp. I don't know how you would actually do this, if you would make the blocks and then cut them to get them on point, or how that would all work, but that would be a pretty fun option. And in this one, I added in an alternating colored block. And I think this really makes the circles pop. And I think playing around with this pattern would be really, really fun. I really like the way that this looks. How would you have made this? Would you have done templates? What would you have done? How would you have done it? Would you have done foundation paper piecing? Would you have tried to traditionally piece those? You have some alternative method you could have used to make those curves. I'm not exactly sure how you would, any other way you would do those pieced triangle curves. I think it would be challenging. So, but definitely curious to hear what you think and how you would do it. There's many different ways to achieve these blocks. Don't forget, you can get the templates for free. I will link to them. I will link to where they are in my shop in the description below. And if you're getting the templates for free, you know, if you want to sign up for my newsletter, I send you 1 email a month. Maybe 2 if something crazy is happening, but I don't really have the time to put too much together. But consider joining the newsletter subscription. If you've made it this far, if you could like, subscribe, put me a little purple heart in the comments, that would be amazing. I'm going to link the playlist to my other random number generated videos right up here. And don't forget, I'm live every week. And right now I'm live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear from you in the comments. And I hope that you are finding time for yourself. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.